Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Made it back from Dale Hollow to an unseasonably warm Wisconsin here. It's very, very nice. It's like upper 60s, which is unusual for this time of year, but I'm not complaining because it makes me feel that much better about having a bad tournament. And I got to tell you a couple of things right off the bat. First off, I've gotten a ton of comments from people that are like, Matt, you gotta give up your old school fishing ways. You gotta go with the forward-facing sonar. You will not be able to compete if you don't. And I want to make something very clear here. I spent almost 2 full days of my 2.5 days of practice looking for the same fish that ultimately won the tournament, meaning I was out there looking for forward-facing sonar fish, and I found a few here and there, but I never found an area that had a big group of fish. This is the big misconception about forward-facing sonar. It's not as simple as you just turn it on and there's fish everywhere around you that you catch. The guys that are most consistent with it, it's not necessarily just their ability to catch them using forward-facing sonar. It's really more about being able to identify where these suspended fish are. You know, for somebody like myself, I've been trained to fish, if you want to call it old school terms, meaning, you know, we're really kind of looking for 2 different groups of fish. The old school way is much more of your structure-orientated fish. You're looking for fish that are relating to cover because that gave an angler something to fish. I think while we were doing that, there was always the idea that a good part of the population was suspended out in the middle part of the lake, but there was no good way to target those fish. Now we have a good way to target those fish. And the problem I have is I've got all this previous history that I'm trying to use to find suspended fish. And I think the realization I'm coming to is I need to just completely ignore that and try to figure out what those suspended fish are doing and how to locate them. Because there's obviously plenty of guys that know how to find these suspended fish. It's not as simple as you just pull up into a pocket or a cove or main lake or over the main river channel and find the fish. There's more to it, and that's what I'm still really working on. But I want you guys to know that when, you know, as long as forward-facing sonar is a legal tool in my tournaments, I'm going to do everything I can to continue to try to get better at it. And I spent a lot of my practice, probably to the detriment of the actual tournament itself, meaning my finish, because I'm trying to look for those winning fish, and I just never found them. You know, yes, I'm finding fish that I can catch here and there, but I didn't find anything that really made me feel really good about it. So ultimately, what I ended up doing was going back to what I'm very familiar with and most comfortable with, which was beating the bank. And to my surprise, what had really happened from practice to the first day of the tournament for me, so the first day for Group B, was a good wave of fish had pushed up and actually started spawning. During practice, I had only seen a couple of spawners, and ultimately, I went back to where one of them was and ended up finding a whole bunch more and never really left that area. So I kind of was able to make hay on it, and it was doing fine in terms of competing and in terms of cashing a check. You know, I spent the first 2 hours kind of just bumming around and trying to make some other things happen, and it didn't happen. So then I was like, well, I'm gonna go try to catch a bedfish just to put a fish on the board, and that was 2 hours into the day. Well, you take out that first 2 hours and I had 26 pounds the remaining 5 hours of the day. So, I mean, I was doing all right. And that also includes the fact that I caught a 4-pounder that grabbed a jig and I hooked him just on the outside of the lip. So I had to let that fish go. I lost one the first day in a tree that was a 2.5 to 3-pounder. I had a bunch more that would come up and look at a floating worm and then, you know, not commit to it. So it was kind of one of those things where, yes, I was not fishing for the winning fish, but I did definitely come in contact with the fish to go home with a check. And the issue I'm struggling with is, had I done that for 2.5 days of practice, would I have found enough to really be in a much better position where a check wouldn't have been good, but I may have been able to make the top 10 cut like some of the other guys that did concentrate on shallow water fishing. So there's a lot of juggling here, but don't think, the comments are, Matt, you got to give up what you're doing and go old school or go with the forward-facing sonar. And I'm definitely trying to do that. It's just not my specialty in terms of finding these suspended fish. I actually used it more to catch a few fish, to catch some of the fish that were hanging out on some of the short points and secondary points waiting to move into the pockets to spawn where I had spawning fish. And you probably saw that on day 2. I caught a couple of fish on a jerkbait. So let's go over the baits I used. The first day, pretty much everything was caught off of the beds, now that I think about it, so I had a handful of different bed baits I was throwing. What do I got here? So this guy right here, this is just a small little weenie worm that I was throwing. This is a local bait. I don't want to give you the wrong name. Let me find it. So it's the Bassnut Lures, the 3-inch wiggle worm. A really good little bed fishing bait made here in Wisconsin. So I just was fishing this on a drop shot, just nothing fancy, just a little drop shot. Caught several fish on this. This is just the NSJ 871 by MHX. It's a custom built rod that I make, so it's a 7.3 medium light fast action rod, really good all purpose, just basic finesse rod. And then I had that paired up with an Abu Garcia Xenon X 10-pound braid, X9 Berkeley braid to a 8-pound 100% Berkeley trilene fluorocarbon. So that was one of the bed fishing baits. Another one that I like to throw is this guy right here. This is just a little Ica, again on a drop shot with a robo worm hook. Again, this is the NSJ 871 by MHX. So again, just a straight finesse rod, and then in this case I had it rigged up with a Abu Garcia Revo Rocket. Same line on that, 10-pound braid to 10-pound fluorocarbon. And then there were a few fish that didn't want to come up off the bottom. They were definitely more interested on the baits that were on the bottom. And I got one of them on an Ozark rig with a Berkeley Maxcent Creature Hog. This is just the MHX NMB 874. So it's a 7.3 medium heavy fast action rod. In this case, this is just an Abu Garcia Xenon X bait casting reel. I love that setup. That's kind of my all-purpose, just do everything rod. I did get one as well, flipping a small light Texas rig. And the reason I was doing the Texas rig was I could control the bait better. The Ozark rig, when you pop it, likes to go in a certain direction, and you can't always get it to go in the direction you want. The Texas rig has less movement, and I was able to pop it in front of the fish. And I caught that one just on the, I think I caught one or two maybe on this. This was just the Reaction Innovations Smallie Beaver with a light 3/16 ounce Texas rig. This is an Xenon MGX for the reel. And then this is the MHX NMB 873 7.3 3-power medium heavy. Both those were 15-pound Berkeley trilene 100% fluorocarbon. So those were the flipping ones. And then you saw I also had a couple of fish on the second day fishing a Stunna 112+1. So I caught, what did I have? Two, both smallmouths doing that. Did I have one or two? Now I can't even think. I had a smallmouth. I caught a bunch of shorts. I feel like I had two keepers on it. May have only had one on it. In practice, I had some really nice fish. So I was throwing both Northern Lights and then shad fillet. Both colors seemed to work well. I can't say one was better than the other, but just kind of two of my go-to baits. But that was really good for the fish that were looking to pull in to spawn. They were sitting on the secondary points. You could go around and scope them. Most of those fish didn't seem to want to bite. It seemed like they were pretty lethargic, but there was the ability to generate a couple of bites with the jerkbait better than anything else. And then the last bait that I was throwing, which I don't have out, I don't know why I didn't grab it out, but it was the Zoom trick worm and methylate. So it was just a floating worm, or I was fishing it like a floating worm. And that was good. You know, anytime you're on those highland impoundment lakes and you have a lot of fish that are in and around the spawn, it seems like a floating worm is a good bait. Not necessarily always to get them to commit, but a lot of times it's a good bait to get them to come and show themselves. So several of the spawning fish I caught the first day, I was able to see them come out after the floating worm, and then I was able to go back and find them and visually look at them. And I want to point out, so, you know, my day 2 video, I lost some of the footage for it, and when I say footage, it was actually my commentary. So like I think it was the first intermission I lost. So I may not have been really clear as to what happened, but on my off day after day 1, so it would have been day 2 for Group A, we got like an inch of rain. It was really windy, lots of rain. We may have had more than that. It rained pretty much all day. My biggest concern going out on day 2 for me was going to be that we had a lot of wind, and it was just going to be a day where I thought, okay, well, I've caught a lot of bedfish, but as long as I can see them, I'll be all right. And I was more concerned because we were supposed to have like 20-mile-an-hour winds, which we very much did have. The problem that I found is, before I even started fishing, on the way to the creek where I was fishing, I could see the main lake being clear. And as I was like a half-mile away from the creek that I was going to, I could see the color get off-colored. So the fish that I had found were not visible. I could not see them. So the rain that we had the day before really made sight fishing difficult. So ultimately, I spent like the first period trying to make that area work that I had fished the first day and had a bunch of fish found. And ultimately, I left that after the first 2 hours and then went looking for new water and ended up catching, the 6 fish that I had, just kind of bumming around looking for water that was clear so I could still see. And ultimately, that just meant I was closer, I felt like, to the main lake, which kind of limited, I think, the number of largemouth that I was seeing on beds. But this is one I chalk up to user error. That's the thing that I'm frustrated with. I lost a 3.5 pounder on day 2. I had a bunch of fish come up behind my bait that I just couldn't get to bite. I broke one off in a tree. I hooked that one on the outside of the mouth, and ultimately I missed the check by, I think it was 2.5 pounds, 3 pounds, 4 pounds, something like that. It was pretty close. I know 1 2-pound fish, 2-pound even fish, and I would have moved up, I think, the 21st or 22nd, which that's a lot of points just to leave behind. So I'm pretty disappointed with that. I think I'm sitting in like 45th in points right now. So still just outside of the red crest. I'm still, in a decent position. We're kind of moving past, I think, a lot of this wintering pre-spawn forward-facing sonar, and we're going to get more into kind of, you can do a little bit of everything, but I don't think we're going to see forward-facing sonar dominate quite the way we saw the first half of the year. Now, I'm not saying it won't be used. I'm simply saying I don't think you're going to see 10 out of 10 guys in the top 10 doing it. I think we're going to a couple of tidal rivers. We're going to Lake Eufaula, which I think has the potential to fish better shallow, and then we're ending the year at the St. Lawrence River, which is a river, but there's a lot of different options to do there too. So we just got to get my butt in gear. I got to go get a top 10, really get some good valuable points and move forward. But that's kind of the recap. In a nutshell, disappointed, very much disappointed, and all we can do is move on to the next one. So thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate all your support. We're gonna start thinking about Lake Eufaula at this point, because that's only like a week and a half away right now. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.